And it's really all about that. It's about figuring out what is the right rate for you with your level of experience, with your certain area of expertise, with your location in the world. It's all going to factor into what the rate is for you. Hello and welcome to my channel. If we haven't met yet, my name is Kayla, and this is where we talk all about project management and project leadership. So I'm trying something a little new on the channel. I have gotten so many messages and emails from those of you who are interested in pursuing freelance project management, either as a full-time career path or as like a side hustle. And you have a lot of questions around, how do I do this? How do I get started? How much do I charge? Where do I find clients? And what I want to do is I want to offer some support, some resources in this area, since I know it's of particular interest to a lot of you. So what I'll be doing is each Friday I will be releasing a video, and it will be part of my Freelance Friday series, where we will talk all about these questions that you have around freelance project management. So what I need from you is I need you to let me know what questions you have and what information would be useful to you to hear on the channel. So send me a message, let me know what would be helpful, and I will do my best to address those things in future videos. For today's topic, we are going to address a big one, and that is the question of how much should I charge as a freelance project manager? So I have a few things that I want to talk about in this area. First thing I want to cover is 3 important tips that I want you to remember as you are going about developing your rate strategy and in negotiation with future clients. So I have 3 tips for you there. The second thing is I want to give you a little bit of insight into how I have determined my pricing and let you in there to see sort of like what my strategy is with that. And then the third thing that we'll cover is some quick research into the market to see what's happening out there in terms of freelance project management rates, what is the going rate, what are people paying for this type of service. Okay, so the first thing I want you to consider is whether or not you should be setting your rate by the hour or by the project. Now, if you're new to freelancing, if you are working with a new client, if all of this is new to you, then I almost always recommend setting up an hourly rate first before you go into billing by the hour. And the reason I want you to do this is so that you don't undercut yourself, because we're much more likely to charge less than more. And I find that especially newbie freelancers, they're just not charging enough for projects because they don't have enough information about how much time it takes them to complete projects. So if you're new, I recommend setting an hourly rate first before you dive into billing by the project. It's also a lot more difficult for us as project managers to bill by the project because there's so many different factors, there's scope creep, there's all kinds of stuff that happens within project management that is unpredictable, and we want to make sure that we are getting paid what we're worth. So before you get into billing by the project, I want you to have a really good idea of how long it takes you to manage these types of projects or to work with these types of clients. And if you haven't watched my video about how to figure out how much time it takes you to manage a project, I highly recommend checking that out so you could get some further insight into how you might determine how you would bill by the project in the future. Okay, my second tip for you is as you are going into negotiation with your future clients is when you are working with clients who don't have a advertised or set rate for this service, I want you to ask the question, what is your budget for this service? What is your budget for project management? I want you to start the conversation there because this really opens up the door for you to understand what sort of money they have set aside for your service. Is this even worth pursuing further in the conversation? Have they even thought about a budget? You need to have this conversation up front to know if you are spending your time in a smart way, right? Like we don't want to have these back and forth conversations and then come to realize that they can only pay you a very small amount of money that is not worth your time. So asking the question up front for these projects where there's not an advertised rate, asking them, what is your budget for this service, is a very professional way to open the door. Okay, my third tip for you is to really know your worth and know your bottom line and know that you're not going to go below that amount to dilute your own brand, right? To set yourself up for a situation where you're spending a lot of time on something and not bringing in enough money. So know your worth. Know what that number is for you that you're not going to be, that you won't go below. Now, with that in mind, I also want you to remember to be flexible because we are talking about freelancing. We're talking about situations where we're dealing with all kinds of different clients who have different budgets and things, and you may come across that client or that project that is just the perfect fit. It's such a good situation. You're making some good contacts, but they can't quite meet the amount that you want. Be flexible in those situations where you do feel like the fit is really good and it would be a good partnership for you. I encourage you to be flexible in those situations, but obviously don't go below that amount that you know is not a good situation for you. Okay, with all of that being said, let me go into a little bit of my strategy around my own pricing, how I figured this out for myself. So there's all kinds of different strategies around how do we price ourselves as freelancers. I think one of the more common one is that we are supposed to double our salary and then break that down by an hourly rate. And that's what we charge as freelancers. So honestly, that's what I did. When I started out as a freelancer, I said, okay, if I was a full-time employee, I would be making X amount of dollars a year. I'm going to double that. And then I'll just divide it by, the number of hours that I will work in a year. And this is my rate as a freelancer. So that's what I did starting out, considering that obviously as freelancers, we have to pay for things like our own health insurance. We have to pay some extra taxes. We have to, have our own retirement savings and all this other stuff that gets covered when we are employees. As freelancers, we have to cover that. So I just did the double the salary method and that worked for me. Now, what happened after a little bit of time working in freelancing, working on projects, what I discovered is that, oh, wow, I don't spend 100% of my working hours a day on billable stuff. Okay, I am spending about 60% of my time, between 40 and 60% of my time are billable hours. The rest of it, I am taking care of my business. I'm doing administrative stuff. I'm trying to find more business. So with that in mind, knowing that I'm only able to devote maybe half of my day to a billable hour, I've adjusted my rates accordingly with that information in mind. So you'll do the same thing as you're a freelancer and you sort of see what your cadence is, what your flow is, the type of projects that you're working on. You will be able to figure out what the right rate is for you. And it's really all about that. So with all that in mind, I landed on the rate that is right for me and it fits within the market too. So I want you to keep that in mind, that it needs to be the rate that is appropriate and right for you, given your level of experience, your area of expertise, where you are in the world. Land on a rate that makes sense for you. We're not all going to have the same rates as freelancers. I think it's okay to say that and it's okay to accept that. There is no one right rate. Choose something that's right for you and then make sure it makes sense within the market too. Okay. I mean, I don't think as project managers, it makes sense for us to say our rates are $500 an hour. It just doesn't make sense within the market, not unless you're doing, I don't know, something really amazing. I would love to know what a project manager does to be worth $500 an hour. So make sure it's a good fit within the market. Now, how do we know what those numbers are? Well, we can figure that out with a little bit of research. And I did a little bit of research before I started working on this video just to see what the going rates are, what people are paying, what people are charging. So what I did was I checked out Upwork first. So on Upwork, it tells us project managers cost between $19 and $45 an hour. I was I don't know. I wasn't super impressed with that. If you've watched my video on how to find work as a freelance project manager, you'll know that I didn't have a lot of luck on Upwork finding jobs that were a good fit for me, that were a good fit for the rates that I was charging. I just felt like Upwork was kind of on the lower end. So for me, it wasn't a good fit. So $19 to $45 an hour, that's really not great for a freelancer in the United States because we have all of these other expenses as well. But that is what I found on Upwork. So the next place I looked was Indeed. And Indeed told me that contract project managers on average in the United States are making $80.99 per hour. So I was like, okay, this is a little bit better. This is a little bit better. $80.99. But keep in mind that this is a contract project manager. And what I'm reading into this is these are probably project managers that are brought into larger companies on a contract basis, maybe for like a year at a time. And so maybe they don't have the flexibility like you would find with some of that work on Upwork, where it's really short-term kind of gig work, where we can pick and choose when we work on it, what our hours are. I'm reading into this a little bit, but I sort of think that that's one of the big differences here. The next thing I looked at was I just did a Google search to see like what's the average salary of a project manager in the United States. This was all over the place, like anywhere from $60,000 a year to upwards of $150,000 a year. So obviously, like, you know, it can be different types of project management, different types of credentials required, different levels of experience, all this kind of stuff. But at least it gives us like a range, $60,000 to $150,000. We could sort of surmise if we're a newer project manager, we might be looking more at 60 to 75. If we are a more experienced project manager, it's going to be in the 100,000 plus. So it just gives us a good baseline for determining what those market rates are. So the last thing I did was I went through some emails. I get a lot of emails from recruiters for contract project manager positions, and I just did a quick comb through those to see what the rates have been on those contract jobs that they sent over. Now, these are typically anywhere from like 3-month full-time contract to like 12-month full-time contract project management jobs. And what I found there was the rates were more like $40 an hour to maybe around $80 an hour on the upper end. Again, a big spread there, but it helps us in determining, okay, what could I charge? Like, what is a realistic rate for the market? Okay, so I hope that was helpful to you as you are going about considering how to set your rates, how much you should charge. Let me know what other questions you have around this. I think it's a really fascinating topic. I would love to know what questions you have. And let me know what questions you have about freelance project management in general. I'd love to do some future videos on this. I'll see you next time. Bye.